On Friday, Delhiites woke up to news of yet another fire, this time in Govindpuri. Three of a family were dead. It's hardly a standalone accident. Delhi, it appears, is dealing with a fire crisis. In the first few months of this year, the National Capital Fire Services received over 7,800 emergency calls. That is 20% spike compared to last year and a 73% jump from just the previous few months. Malviya Nagar, Vivek Vihar, Palam, Greater Kailash, and the latest Govindpuri. The frequency and scale of these incidents point to something beyond coincidence. Delhi is dealing with a fire crisis and it has been building for some time. The causes are multiple, interconnected, and in many cases entirely preventable. Extreme heat, aging infrastructure, buildings that were never designed for the loads they now carry, emergency response systems that struggle to keep up with the geography of the city. Today, we break down exactly why fire tragedies have become a recurring headline in the national capital and what, if anything, is being done about it. Let's start with the weather. Because this year, Delhi summer was not normal. Temperatures touched between 42 and 46 degrees Celsius, record breaking numbers that pushed the city's electrical infrastructure to its absolute limits. When temperatures climb that high, air conditioner usage surges across millions of homes, offices, and commercial establishments simultaneously. The electrical grid in many parts of Delhi simply cannot absorb that kind of collective demand. The result? Transformers overheat. Wiring gives away, short circuits occur, and fires start. The data makes this very clear. Between 60 and 80% of Delhi's fire accidents this year were attributable to electrical faults. Electrical overload, the direct consequence of a city running too many appliances in too much heat or infrastructure that was not built for this scale. There is one more technical factor worth noting. Modern air conditioning units use newer environmental friendly refrigerant gases, but these gases are mildly flammable. When a compressor overheats under sustained summer stress, it does not just fail. It can become a fire hazard, a risk that sits quite literally inside people's homes and offices. The electrical overload explains how fire starts. The next question is why, when they do start, they so often turn fatal. And the answer lies in how Delhi's buildings were constructed and in many cases modified over the years. A large portion of older residential and commercial buildings in the city have a single narrow central staircase. In the event of a fire on a lower floor, this staircase fills with toxic smoke within minutes. For occupants on upper floors, the primary escape route is gone almost immediately. Compounding this, many buildings have permanently sealed windows with iron safety grills. Installed originally for security, these grills also eliminate what would otherwise be a secondary escape route. They also make external rescue operations significantly more difficult. And then there is the regulatory gap that underlies much of this. In Delhi, residential buildings under 15 meters and commercial structures below 9 meters are exempt from obtaining a mandatory fire no objection certificate. No NOC means no legally required fire alarm, no mandatory extinguisher, no enforced safety protocol. A significant portion of the buildings where fire incidents have occurred fall precisely within these exempted categories. The law, as currently structured, does not require them to be safe, and many are not. Emergency response is only as effective as access allows, and in large parts of Delhi, access is a serious problem. The city's old neighborhoods, Chandni Chowk, Malviya Nagar, Tughlakabad Extension, and numerous urban villages have lanes that are simply too narrow for large fire tenders to navigate. When a fire breaks out in these areas, vehicles are forced to stop at the entrance of the lane. Firefighters must carry equipment on foot through congested streets, losing critical minutes in the process. The situation is further complicated by the availability of water. In several of Delhi's densely populated neighborhoods, accessible water hydrants are either absent or too far from the site of the fire. Firefighting teams have had to spend valuable time sourcing and hauling water to the sea, time that in a fire emergency directly translates to lives lost and damages done. These are not new problems. They are structural limitations that have existed for years and have not been adequately addressed. There is also a broader urban planning dimension to this crisis that deserves attention. Neighborhoods like Mukherjee Nagar, Lakshmi Nagar, and urban villages across Delhi were originally zoned and built for residential use. Low density housing, modest electrical loads, simple infrastructure. Over time, many of these areas have been transformed. Coaching centers, paying guest accommodations, small factories, and illegal warehouses now occupy buildings that were designed for families. The electrical demand these commercial establishments generate is enormous. The human density they create is significant, and the safety infrastructure in buildings that were never meant for commercial use is either minimal or entirely absent. It is, in many aspects, a structural mismatch between how these areas evolved and what they were built to handle. When we talk about fire deaths, the instinct is to focus on the flames. But the data tells a more complex story. A significant number of fatalities in Delhi fire incidents are not caused by burns. They result from smoke inhalation, from blocked or inaccessible exits, from warnings that arrived too late, and from rescue operations that were delayed by the very structural problems we have just outlined. In many of these cases, the fire itself was not unsurvivable. What proved fatal was the combination of building design, response time, and the absence of basic safety systems. This distinction matters because it means many of these deaths were preventable. So, what is being done? The Delhi government, in coordination with the central government's Bureau of Energy Efficiency, is implementing a policy restricting air conditions temperature to a range between 20 to 28 degrees Celsius. The objective is to reduce the extreme electrical load that has been triggering transformer failures and grid stress during peak summer hours. Separately, citywide enforcement drives have been launched under the Disaster Management Act, targeting buildings with serious fire safety violations. These are good steps. But given the scale and depth of the structural problems involved, the building stock, the urban layout, the regulatory gaps, they represent a beginning, not a resolution. 7,800 emergency calls since January. Behind each of those numbers is a building, a family, a neighborhood in crisis. The causes, as we have seen, are not mysterious. They are knowable, documented, and in many cases, addressable. The heat is intensifying every year. The city's older building stock is not being replaced overnight. The narrow lanes of Delhi's urban villages are not widening on their own. The causes are known, the solutions are not complicated. What is missing is the urgency. So, what do you think needs to change first? Stricter building regulations, faster emergency response, better urban planning, or something else? Let us know in the comments.